Hello everyone from Real Life of Animals. Killer whales, also known as orcas, may look beautiful and fascinating, but they are not as innocent as their appearance suggests. Pause here for a moment. Please hit the subscribe button. And let's take a closer look at what killer whales are truly capable of. Orcas are the second most widely distributed mammal species on Earth. They can be found in all of the world's oceans, and they can hunt and consume a wide variety of marine life almost without discrimination. However, they don't target only sea creatures. Anything found in the ocean can become their focus, sometimes small fishing boats, sometimes sailors who head out to sea on sailboats. So what do we have in common? The mammal species with the widest distribution on Earth is humans, and the second is this seemingly adorable predator, the killer whale, the orca. Before we begin, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and let's dive in. The sea looked calm that morning. Too calm for the waters off the coast of Patagonia. A thin layer of mist hovered above the surface, blurring the horizon where the gray sky met the steel-colored ocean. The research vessel moved slowly, its engine humming low, almost respectfully, as if aware it had entered someone else's territory. No one on board expected what was about to happen. This area had been studied for years. Orcas were known to pass through during migration, sometimes hunting seals near the rocky shores. But sightings were rare, and close encounters even rarer. The crew, marine biologists, camera operators, and a local guide, had come to document whale behavior, not to become part of it. At first, it was just a shadow beneath the water. One of the researchers noticed it on the sonar screen, a large mass moving parallel to the boat. Silent, controlled, not surfacing. Orcas usually announce themselves, breeches, dorsal fins slicing through waves, unmistakable signs of presence. This one didn't. Minutes passed, the shadow remained. Then the water changed, a subtle shift in the surface tension, like the ocean itself tightening. The guide, a man who had spent his entire life on these waters, went quiet. His hands tightened on the railing. He didn't need instruments to understand what was happening. "They're watching us," he said quietly. That was when the first dorsal fin broke the surface. It was massive, taller than expected, perfectly straight. It moved slowly, deliberately, cutting through the water just meters from the boat. Then another appeared, and another. They weren't circling randomly, they were positioning. The engine was cut, not out of panic but instinct. Noise could provoke curiosity or worse, challenge. The crew stood frozen, cameras rolling, breaths shallow. The orcas moved with unsettling coordination, their black and white bodies sliding beneath the surface like living shadows. One of them surfaced closer than the rest. Its eye became visible, dark, calm, focused. It wasn't the wild, chaotic look of an animal startled by humans. It was calculating, observing, measuring distance, movement, reaction. The orca exhaled, a sharp burst of mist rising into the cold air, then slipped back under the surface. That was the moment everyone realized something was wrong. These orcas weren't hunting seals. They were studying the boat. A sudden impact jolted the vessel, not violent but deliberate, a controlled nudge against the hull. Equipment rattled. Someone swore under their breath. Another impact followed, stronger this time, directly beneath the engine. The guide shouted to stay still. This wasn't aggression. This was testing. Orcas are among the most intelligent predators on Earth. They don't rush. They don't waste energy. They observe first, learn, adapt. And these ones had learned that boats were part of their environment now. The water around the vessel began to churn as the pod moved faster, tighter, more coordinated. One orca surfaced near the bow, another near the stern. They were cutting off escape routes that didn't exist. The crew had become the variable in an equation the orcas were solving. And the orcas were very good at solving problems. No one noticed the smallest orca at first, the juvenile, until it surfaced directly beside the boat, rolling slightly to expose its eye, locking gaze with one of the researchers. There was curiosity there and something else, expectation. The sea was no longer calm. It was waiting. The second impact came without warning. The boat rocked violently, throwing one of the camera operators off balance. A metallic groan echoed through the hull as something heavy brushed against it from below. Not a strike, more like a deliberate push. The orcas were escalating, but still not attacking. That restraint was the most unsettling part. Through the water, shapes moved with precision. One orca swam beneath the boat, scraping its dorsal fin lightly along the underside. Another surfaced near the stern, exhaling loudly, almost mockingly, before disappearing again. The juvenile followed closely, mimicking the adult's movements with eerie accuracy. This wasn't random behavior. Marine biologists had documented similar incidents elsewhere. Orca pods interacting with boats, sometimes damaging rudders, sometimes disabling engines. But this felt different, more organized, more intentional. The guide shouted instructions. No sudden movements, no shouting, no reaching over the edge. The crew obeyed, though fear was creeping in cold and sharp. Then the engine alarm went off. A sharp mechanical warning cut through the air. One of the orcas had struck the propeller, not hard enough to destroy it, but enough to jam it. The boat drifted powerless at the mercy of the current. That changed everything. Predators recognize weakness instantly. The orcas responded almost immediately. Their movements became faster, more assertive. One surfaced directly in front of the boat, lifting its head partially out of the water. The size of it was overwhelming, teeth visible, scarred skin telling stories of past encounters, victories, survival. It opened its mouth slightly, not to bite, but to display. A warning. The juvenile stayed close, watching, learning. One researcher whispered, barely audible, "They're teaching it." And that realization sent a wave of dread through the group. Orcas teach their young through experience, through demonstration, through participation. This wasn't just an interaction, it was a lesson. The boat lurched again as something struck the side, harder this time. Equipment fell. A camera cracked against the deck. Someone screamed. The guide shouted for calm, but his voice trembled. The orcas were no longer just observing. They were deciding. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, everything stopped. The water stilled. The orcas slowed. One by one, they surfaced at a distance, forming a loose line parallel to the boat. The largest orca lingered last, eye visible once more, fixed on the vessel. Seconds stretched into minutes, no one breathed. Finally, the orca turned away. The pod followed. They disappeared into the gray water as silently as they had arrived, leaving behind a damaged, drifting boat and a crew struggling to understand what had just happened. Hours later, they were towed back to shore. No one spoke much. Because they all knew the truth. The orcas could have destroyed the boat. They could have killed them, but they hadn't. They had chosen not to, and that choice was far more terrifying than an attack. The incident didn't stay quiet for long. Footage from the cameras, shaky, incomplete, but undeniable, spread quickly among marine research circles. Experts analyzed every frame, every movement. The conclusion was unanimous and deeply unsettling. This wasn't aggression born from fear. It was behavioral adaptation. The orcas had learned that boats were neither prey nor predator, but something new. Objects that could be disabled, studied, controlled. They had tested boundaries and recorded outcomes just as they would with any unfamiliar element in their environment. What made this encounter different was the presence of the juvenile. Teaching behavior suggested something long-term, a shift. In the months that followed, similar incidents were reported across different regions. Orcas interacting with boats, targeting rudders, disabling engines, then leaving, rarely causing injuries, almost never attacking people directly. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't play. It was strategy. The crew from that day never returned to the water together again. Some left marine research entirely, others continued, but with a new respect, a quiet awareness that humans were no longer just observers in the wild. They were participants. The guide later said something that stayed with everyone who heard it. "We think intelligence makes us safe," he said. "But when you meet another intelligence out there, one that doesn't need us, you realize how small you really are." The orcas didn't need violence to prove dominance. They needed understanding. And they had it. Somewhere beneath the surface, pods continued to move through the oceans, passing knowledge from one generation to the next. Learning, adapting, watching, waiting. Not with hatred, not with rage, but with patience. And that is what made the story truly frightening. Because the ocean didn't fight back that day. It remembered.